Hi, everyone. It's Sarah and Teresa here. We wanted to take a moment to come on. We're going to try really hard to be snappy, and I already have fallen off that bus by saying we're going to be snappy with this. But we wanted to take some time to answer some questions that came through related to repair. And this is a topic that has been on my head and heart for a long time, as well as Teresa's, and we're doing a ton of research around it. Because when we think about creating high quality, high value teams where psychological safety is high, repair becomes really critical to it. So we're just going to answer three questions. We're going to talk through some, things you should be thinking about, and then possible ways to move forward. So, Teresa, let's start with one that we know happens, is a pretty common situation of repair, which is addressing mistakes and then regaining credibility. So the question is, I missed an important deadline and it impacted the project. How do I own my mistake and regain respect? What are some traps people fall into in a situation like that that they need to be aware of?
I think the most common trap is assuming no one noticed, or
Ah!
um, or I'm being
I
a
mean, I'm
little
having that
cheeky, but
reaction
like, yeah,
because, like, maybe I've done
whoop, yeah.
that.
Um, no, but truthfully, I think the mistake or the trap that runs underneath all of these is the misunderstanding that time alone is going to
Yeah.
fix this in some way. Um, Something that sticks out to me that's important to this when we're trying to repair, specifically when the repair was one situation, one instance, as opposed to maybe a lot of cuts, I might take a little bit different approach, but acknowledging as publicly or to whoever the
Mhm.
stakeholders are in that you know what happened, that you're owning what happened, that you're
Mhm.
not sweeping it under the rug. Um, I think that in and of itself can go quite a long way. And then as we've just seen with the team recently, not only stepping into that moment and saying, and here's what I want to do about it. And what else comes up for you that you think might be helpful, knowing that my goal is really bringing this back together, or knowing that my goal is um, regaining the respect or regaining your confidence. I think naming all of those as
Mhm.
a very healthy, productive path forward. What comes up
Yeah.
for you, Sarah?
Yeah, it does feel like a really simple framework of acknowledge what happened.
Yeah.
If it's necessary, depending on the situation, share where the fall happened, not
Yeah.
to excuse the
Yeah.
behavior or excuse the breakdown, but to realize like I went back and I understand that this is where I dropped the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have to. It could just be as simple as like, I own it. I'm the one who dropped it. I understand that this was the impact and naming the impact, right? Because sometimes we want to, yeah, sorry, apologize for it quickly, instead of really going, I want to own the fact that I did this and I know that this is the impact that it's had on people. And here's what I'm doing going forward. Like that. And it's never blaming anyone else. It's never saying, yeah, but well, I didn't get this from you. I didn't, like just taking that, like acknowledging what happened, acknowledging the impact, and then naming what you're going to do moving forward. And I think that point that you bring up is really valuable of like who needs to hear that
Hmm.
because it could be comfortable to maybe just share that with your boss when it was a huge project team that was impacted by it. I'm thinking about a situation in my very, very youthful age where I made a stupid mistake as a high schooler and almost got booted from my high school play. And I apologized to the entire cast and crew because my behavior almost put the entire show at risk. And that wasn't just to the director, it was to everyone.
Mm.
Uh, and isn't comfortable, but that's part of how we regain that credibility. Okay. Um, this is something that happens a lot with the best of intentions, right? Sometimes we think we can be complimenting sometimes we say something, but a real small repair opportunity, it comes up when maybe you inadvertently offended someone on the team. What's the best way to apologize and move forward? One of the traps that we often see people fall into. We've both been guilty of this at some point, for sure, of like, oh, but that wasn't my intention. And we
Sure.
think that good intentions absolves us from negative impact. But the example I like to share when we're working with groups is, you know, any car accident I've ever been in, I didn't intend to hit them and they didn't intend to hit me, but the damage is still there and the stress of that situation is still there. So that wasn't malicious, but the damage still happened. And so we need to repair. So I think that's a trap that people can fall into is like, well, that wasn't my intention. So I don't have to take any accountability.
Mm.
What comes up for you?
Yeah, I think a trap I've fallen into, probably many of us have, is that sometimes we catch in the moment that what we said didn't land, and we
Mm,
think we can just keep talking and somehow
mm,
it's gonna
hmm
get better.
hmm
So what I would offer to the person who submitted this and to everyone who's ever been or will be in the same boat is how do I do a more skillful job of staying tuned into that person I'm talking to, trying to catch right away if oh, I'm not sure the way I meant that landed with how you heard it. Can we pause on that? Like
Yeah.
the the more we can just finesse that, make up for that, correct that in the moment, the better. Because
Yeah.
the I think what can become a worst case scenario is either you're not paying attention or you miss that it bothered the person. Days, weeks, years, we've seen that too, go by, and we're still stuck back at the moment of injury in
Mm,
this
mm,
conversation.
mm,
And that's a much more awkward place of repair. It's a much more vague kind of place of repair. So I like a little bit of that immediacy and smoothing. If we feel like we're missing the mark in real time, to even just state that out loud, like, oh, I feel like we're missing the mark, or but I intended as a compliment. I don't think that landed with you. Like, let's call the timeout.
Yeah, that resonates for me. That's something that Nick and I work on a lot. And I've found myself recently, like I'll make an observation or state something without without considering that it might feel personal to him or sharp, and it has nothing to do
Sure.
with him actually. It was actually coming from my own, challenges, and so I've had a lot of moments like, oh, hold on. The reason I asked that isn't
Yeah.
because I'm thinking this about you. It's because I'm worried about this within my own head and my own
Yeah.
challenges. And so, but that point you bring up of like being able to more quickly pay attention to when the injury might happen also is showing empathy and, care
Yeah.
for the other person. The simplest, when it's brought to your attention that something you said or did, again, like you could deflect, like, well, you're too sensitive, or you don't know how to take a
Yeah.
joke, or you don't like all the BS that we hear.
You know that's not what
You
I
know that that's
meant.
not, yeah. Oh. Um, can be as simple as like, that wasn't my intention. And I see that that didn't have the impact I want. And so
Yeah.
I take ownership for that. Because I think like intention matters, but it doesn't, it's important. Like, this is what I always say. Like, if you're maliciously saying it, then that intention
Yeah.
does actually matter.
Yeah.
But like, oh, that's not how I want you to feel. And I'm sorry that that was the impact I had. And
Yeah.
I own that and just sit with it because those moments actually what I see and what I've gone through myself, because I've had to really work on that initial defense mechanism, is like those are the moments of connection where somebody is sharing with you something they
Mm.
need. And you saying like, no, you don't actually need that. No, I didn't actually do that has a huge negative impact on the relationship. Instead of being like, even in those little moments when you go, oh, ooh, okay. Sorry, that wasn't my intention, but I'm sorry that was the impact. What you're doing is sending the message that they can continue to have those conversations with you and you'll
Yeah.
sit with them and you'll learn.
Yeah.
Okay, last.
Okay.
And that was Nick sneezing. Okay, so last is, and this is one that we get brought in a lot, but it's
Yeah.
interesting. So there was a recent organizational change. So we're talking about a systemic wide challenge.
Hmm.
How do we address the concerns so there's low morale after a recent organizational change. How do we address the concerns and rebuild team spirit? Boy, do we see this situation happen a lot. And, you and I were talking about it. What comes up for you?
something that might ruffle some feathers of the leaders within the organization is the idea that repair might even be necessary after a
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you've made a case for it that seems logical and appropriate, and you have access to all the information, it's so frustrating when other people aren't seeing it or experiencing it how you are. And I'm thinking of an organization we serve recently who does have some repair to do, not even because people are in disagreement about what needed to change, but the how. The
Yeah.
how felt like people described it as the claw. They just got plucked up and reassigned without being heard or treated as a human, right? There were lots of very negative reactions to the how. Um, we know that people, this is sensitive stuff. People are
Yeah.
likely to experience that loss, but when we're not naming it, when we're treating people like they're interchangeable or like the job they've been doing is interchangeable, repair is going to be necessary. And the other thing that stuck out to me in this one, we hear this a lot, whether they call it team spirit or whatever, like it's people can still successfully accomplish their jobs while they're struggling with the culture change, while they're struggling
Mm,
with. So
mm.
I think sometimes it is for the leader's comfort
Yeah,
that people have
exactly.
their t-shirts on and they're, doing their
Morale is
whatever.
high
Yeah,
because when
yeah,
morale
yeah.
is high, it's easier for you
Right,
as the
right. And
leader.
yeah, so I think that's what I would encourage is decoupling the idea that people have to be shouting it from the rooftops how great it is to work here. They can be successfully doing their jobs while navigating those tricky feelings.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just to highlight again what you said, it's usually sometimes it's the what, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. Sometimes.
but
Hmm.
more often than not, it's the how.
Yeah.
And there's just this expectation that people should be grateful they have a job.
Yes.
That's something we
Yes.
hear a lot.
Yeah.
And and part of it is I think about the great quote of leading change is disappointing people at a level they can tolerate a bit
Yeah.
of, but recognizing that how you communicate, who you involve in the conversations, who you don't
Yeah.
involve in the conversations can have a significant impact. And so again, repair isn't always these huge moments. It isn't, repair can be clarifying, again, acknowledging, understanding the impact, and
Yeah.
talking about what we're going to do to move forward. So, those are just a couple. And obviously, friends, if you have other situations or challenges that you want us to explore here on the newsletter or on our podcast, please send us an email. We'd love to hear your challenges and to help you think through it. So, with that, my friends, we're going to wrap up. All right. Take care, everyone. Be well. Bye.